Let me, of course, say good morning and recognize my cabinet colleagues, the permanent secretaries and deputy permanent secretaries with us today, the president and the membership of Pratt, the staff of Ministry of Communications and Information Division and Government Communications Division. Of course, joining us virtually, His Excellency, the High Commissioner to India, Dr. Roger Gopal, Senator Paul Richards, who is, I believe, is on his way, as well as my colleagues who are on their way. Of course, all, as I said, all the membership of Pratt, the panelists who are here, the speakers who are here, and members of media, and of course, communications professionals who have joined us today. I want to thank the President and the membership of Pratt, firstly, for the opportunity to partner with them in this free event for communications professionals. And even more so, to offer my the opportunity to share. Well, good morning, Minister of Education, how are you? An opportunity to share with you briefly some of the challenges faced and the opportunities that are available to us in communicating the work of the government. The Ministry of Communications has a broader than usual view of the work of government, very much like the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Planning and Development. And it is through those lenses that very often we are able to communicate that cohesive work of government to the population. Now, it is a role that many would believe should be one of the easiest of the ministerial assignments, especially since it comes with a supporting cast of communications professionals across 23 ministries and various state agencies. However, as many of those who have preceded me understood, and as I have come to understand vividly, it is not the easiest of assignments. And it is in that in learning that lesson, I have come really to appreciate and respect the work and the challenges of communications professionals in general in this country. You know, there's a popular line in philosophy that asks a very esoteric question, and the answer to that question has probably filled thousands and thousands of pages over the years. And the question, for all its complexity, really hits at the heart of, or is really particularly applicable to communications professionals, but even more so those who are tasked with communicating the work of government. And the question, I'm sure you've heard it, I don't know how many times, is if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to see it fall, did it make a noise? And therein lies the conundrum faced by every government and faced by every minister of government who faces daily the condemnation that the government is doing nothing for we. And this is in the light of the fact that daily the government invests millions of dollars into projects and initiatives that are designed to improve the lives of the citizens of this country. And yet, there are portions, and some will say significant portions, of the population who don't believe that anything is being done to improve their daily lives. And it's a challenge, it is a challenge that I have been faced with from day one. It's a challenge that I've grappled with from day one. And I know I'm not alone. The fact that we have a room full of communications professionals here tells me that I'm not alone. The fact that I am joined by colleagues, and I have other colleagues who are on the way, tells me that we are also focused on figuring out how best to navigate that communications conundrum that we face. Where do we speak? How do we speak? When do we speak? How much? How little? And in what way do we speak? And how do we battle, and how best do we address the rapid dissemination of misinformation and disinformation that we face as a society and as institutions of authority? Now that challenge is real and that challenge is serious, but the challenge is not insurmountable. And I truly believe that it is not insurmountable, but it does require a radical review of how we communicate as a government, but more importantly, how the average citizen sees the cohesive work of government happening on their behalf. And that is a shift that needs to happen. But even more so, there is something more fundamental which lies at the heart of the disconnect between the amount of positive work that is happening across this country in line ministries that are represented here today, throughout the wider public sector and in private sector, both of which are represented here today, and that almost not so blissful ignorance that exists about that work. And in addition to that, the distrust, the growing distrust and unhealthy skepticism, I think, that anything or anyone who can be labeled as an institution or authority is faced with. And that fundamental heart of that argument, I believe, is the growing distrust of the traditional sources of information that are fueled by the growth of more and more platforms that present very often fraudulent information or biased opinion as fact, but do it in a way that resonates with individuals. And it is that almost emotionally manipulative appeal to individual bias that very often trumps logic or fact, and that is a real issue that as communicators we are all faced with. And I say communicators in a broad sense because I see myself more as a stakeholder in the communication space than a communicator. I would not belittle your profession by just assuming myself a communicator any more than I assume myself a lawyer. Wrong, Reggie? You know, we have so many options and avenues to access information. But I cannot think of a time, certainly not in my lifetime, where there has been such a challenge to inform the public. And here's the thing, it's not for lack of trying. I see my colleagues getting that information out there. My colleagues in information division, my colleagues in government communications, and the professionals in the various ministries and the state agencies, I see them put it out there. But is there a desire to disseminate, to share that information devoid of a biased interpretation or misinterpretation? And just as importantly, is there a desire to receive that information as it is packaged, even if it doesn't resonate with your personal opinion? And unfortunately, the answer to both those questions all too often is no. And of course, into that must be placed the real issue of what is the role of the role and function of the communications teams in the ministries and in state agencies, and are they sufficiently equipped to effectively communicate in today's world? And in answering that, the Ministry of Communication instituted the communities of practice, where communications professionals in various government ministries and state agencies gather to share stories, experiences, exchange information, upskill with subject matter experts and industry leaders, and engage in best practices. Because the research suggests that a community of practice is a group of people who, I'm reading this to make sure I don't get it wrong, share a concern or a passion for something that they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. And by definition, that is also very much what Pratt is and very much what Pratt represents. So when we were approached, it took very little persuasion by the executive to find a partner in OPM Communications, because we both recognized that there was and there is a dire need for these conversations and these collaborations to occur. And we agreed as well that while there is much to discuss, more importantly, there is much to do. So it was a very natural and organic fit for OPM Communications to collaborate with Pratt to make this event happen. I want to tell you that in many ways, while I respect what you all do, I feel sorry for you all, because the dynamic operating environments in which communications professionals, and I will put up my hand and say in particular government communications professionals, currently work is characterized by volatility and uncertainty and complexity and ambiguity. And it demands new skill sets and approaches, and to pretend otherwise is to just simply continue to engage in futile exercises. Because now social media literacy, knowledge about stakeholder engagement, data analytical skills, these are all key competencies that are required to be a communications professional. Extreme connectivity and the exponential rise in data and information has driven citizens' expectations, which in turn produces greater demands for transparency and participation and responsiveness. Yet at the same time, institutions are faced with the challenge of trying to attract and retain stakeholder attention and gain a reputation for reliable and truthful communications in an environment of clickbait and false news and alternative facts. And that is a challenging space to operate in. It's a challenging space for a profession. It's a challenging space for a government. Because there is no doubt that institutions of authority and the people that offer themselves for service in that framework are up against real and sometimes rabid opposition. And I am making it very clear that I use that word in the strictest definition of the word. But they are, and we are up against opposition, institutions of authority, and I place you all in that space. And they utilize as one of their major platforms the widespread and repeated dissemination of quite often blatant untruths. And they do that utilizing that tried and tested approach of repeat it. And if you repeat it enough, regardless of whether or not it is true, it will become a fact in some people's minds. So, as the problem statement of your conference proceedings so correctly asserts, in today's rapidly evolving information landscape, effective communication has become more crucial than ever. As the volume and speed of information dissemination increases, major stakeholders face challenges in ensuring accurate and timely information reaches citizens. This leads to a growing need for a comprehensive platform where stakeholders can convene, share best practices, enhance their communications efforts, and foster public-private partnerships to address the pressing issue of keeping citizens informed. There can be no doubt, absolutely no doubt then, that effective government communications must be value-led, resting on the values that characterize conversations, including the principles of cooperation, distribution of speakers' rights, the practice of listening and courtesy, and the application of trust-building practices. And additionally, for government communications to be effective, it must be cohesive and cooperative. It must be rejecting of silos. It has to be timely and consistent and accessible across multiple formats and platforms. And it must be digestible to that person in the biscuit factory who gathers their news on the way to work, sometimes in public transport or during their break on the job. It has to be devoid of the fluff and the powder and just simply answer the questions. How can the average citizen benefit from the program, the initiative, the project? And how does it change, if not their lives, the lives of their children for the better? Ladies and gentlemen, I was instructed by Lizella that I had to be brief, and I think I've already mashed her corn. So, as I conclude, I wish to congratulate Pratt for both its boldness and its bravery in taking on this endeavor. It is a bold and prescient step into the increasingly dynamic future of communications. And it is certainly my hope, it is certainly the hope of the Ministry of Communications that this conference is only the first of its kind. I want to assure you that we remain open to partnering with other organizations to assist in the improvement and the dissemination of effective government communications, and that my office remains open to all who wish to offer ideas and to anyone who is able to identify any gaps in our communication and wishes to assist us to close those gaps. So, thank you for the opportunity to partner. Thank you for the courtesy of your attention, and I truly and eagerly look forward to the rest of today's proceedings. Thank you.